while you guys were on break, I played around with it a little bit. Right now, I'm trying to figure out how to get it to read all of the days and all of the months, but for simplification, I know that it does work if we leave the hours singular and we just give it 1 day, and it applies that 1 hour and 1 day to all 3 months. So that gives us a list of angles.
So what date did we choose?
The 22nd, right? Because it's the mean. Yeah, it's the median of all of them. So.
Also, that's why it's showing all of the other outputs.
Yeah, because it was taking. What it was doing is it was taking the 21st, and it was showing the 21st on all 4 months, and then it was taking the 22nd, showing the 22nd on all 4 months, so on and so forth. Huh?
You just left the 21st?
22nd. It's the one in the middle. So what that gave us is, if you're thinking about your section analysis that you have to do, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in the near future here, but it gave us this. It gave us the angles of the sun on those days. Okay, so what you'll see is that the lowest angle is at the winter solstice, and the highest angle is at the summer solstice, and then the equinoxes are going to be approximately the same. Okay, so what we got to do now is replace the geometry, the context geometry, with our model. But not only that, we have to also provide a new test surface. So I'm going to generate a surface to use. So let's take a look at what that looks like, right? So the surface itself, I'm really just going to go into Rhino on a layer that I can turn off. So I'll switch over to layer 1. Actually, is that on layer 1? Yeah. Let me go to layer 4. And I'll just do a rectangle around it, something like that. I want to make it much bigger than the pavilion itself. And then create a planar surface. Planar SRF. Anybody need to see the rectangle again? Alright, so I'll go back. The rectangle is basically, you just click on the rectangle tool here, and you click in the workspace somewhere to the bottom left of our model and somewhere to the top right of our model, like that. And then click it and type in PLANARS, and it'll fill out the rest for you. Planar surface. If it looks like this, as a refresher, guys, if it looks like this, that means that you're in wireframe. So just switch your display under the display tab to shaded viewport, and you'll see the surface itself. So with that, I'm going to select the test surface. You have a question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we use a non-flat plane, like such as topography, as the test surface?
I don't know yet. I haven't tried it.
Oh, okay.
I suspect, yeah. We'll try it at some point. So the test surface, I'm going to set one BREP, and I'm going to select that instead. Make sure when you go to set a BREP that you set one BREP, not set multiple.
The multiples for the design part, right?
No. No. I just don't want you to have both of them processing at the same time. So now this BREP one at the bottom, that's for the design, the building. That's what you're talking about, right? Yeah. So this one is for the building. Right now, what it's telling you is that it's got a full list of all open BREPs. We may run into a problem if we reference all of these in and they're not considered open BREPs. So let's try it. So I'm going to put in a new one rather than overriding. And I'm going to right click and say set multiple BREPs. And I'm just going to pull a window from the left to the right, so that I don't select anything else, right? So that'll only select what my window is fully encompassing. And then hit enter. It should, when you zoom in on it, it should look like it's shaded a little bit. If you select this, it should shade a different color. And at this stage, I'm going to turn off my layer 4. Okay, so that's going to look like that. And as I hover over it, the good thing is they're all reading as the same thing. So they're all reading as a referenced BREP. So let's test the connection to these. Okay, so what I'll do is rather than deleting this, I think I'm just going to move it down to the bottom and replace. So let me right-click this, and I'm going to disconnect all outputs. Did you guys see that?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the one that's currently connected. Right-click on BREP and go to disconnect and disconnect all. It'll look like that. So I'm going to change the names of these so I know which BREP is which. So this one I'm going to call Spa Pavilion. And this one I'll call Preload BREP. And I'll just put that off to the side. Do I need to pause for you guys to catch up?
Yes.
Okay. All right, our next step is going to be to plug in the pavilion, right? So this is new to me. We're trying this out here for the first time. I'm hoping it's just going to project everything. So the preview, I don't think that's really going to do anything for us, unless we turn this off. Yeah, there you go. Let me go into perspective. Okay, so I plugged it into preview, so the preview is working properly. And then I also plug it into wires, and now I can see wires is working properly. But that's not really the important part. The important part is plugging it into context over here. So if you have a component that's sort of off screen like that, it's really far away. The downside is when you grab this, you can't really right click to drag or anything like that. So what you can do is click it, and you can still mouse wheel back, and then mouse wheel back over here, and drop it into context. Okay, so again, that was the Spa Pavilion BREP component. Gets plugged into context. So now I'm going to go back to the top view here so I can do my actual analysis. Yeah, so I should be able to just toggle this back on to run, and it should work. Let's try it. There we go. So now this is a very, very pixelated version of the shade and shadow study for this building. Now, what I want to point out is that it's pixelated because we've told it to make a grid size of 4. So if I change that grid size, it'll become a little more fine. So if I switch that down to 1, it should rerun and be a little bit more of a fine-tuned shadow. There you go. Yeah, it takes a few minutes.
So 4, 2, 1.
I went down to 1, but it wasn't enough, right? So even this one is still very pixelated.
0.1 or something?
Yeah, we're going to have to go down. Guys, can I bring you back in here for a second? The other thing we can do is reduce the size of the surface itself. Okay, so and before doing this, I suggest that you turn off the processing of the analysis. So, where'd my grasshopper go? There we go. So I would toggle this off and then grab this surface, and now I can scale it down. Oh, it won't let me do edit points, will it? Edit points? Yeah. So to scale it down, I turned my edit points on. You can't really see it on screen. It's hard. But I clicked this one on the left over there. And then it allows you to select points like this. And you can just yank it in. Or you can do a move edge, if you're familiar with that. Smaller. Yeah, I'm making it smaller so that it won't process so many of the squares. And then the other thing to note is you really don't need anything on the south side, right? Because the sun is only going to project north. So hit escape to get out of modifying it. Edit points, you just select the surface and you click on this one right here. If you guys are more familiar with the gumball, you can do, I think it's Control-Shift. Control-Shift and click on one of the edges, and then you can use the gumball to yank it back and forth. That works too. All right, so I'm going to go back into my analysis with a much smaller surface. Oh, and let me turn the layer off. All right, the analysis is back on. It's still really not fine enough for me, so I'm going to go down to like a 0.01. No, not 0.01. 0.1. Yeah.
Yeah, I did that. I did 0.01, and it's frozen.
0.01 is going to be really small. I just made 10 times the number of points. You made 100 times the number of points.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
So what
Hang on. All right, so it finally calculated. So I would suggest not going down to 0.1, maybe 0.5. Yeah. So you can see now that the shadow is much more clear, a lot clearer than it was before. So what you want to be aware of now is that this is really just the background, right? So this is just going to show the shadow in a graphic way. So you'll push it out into Illustrator, you'll produce it that way. Or you could, if you really needed to, if you're in a pinch, you could capture a JPEG just straight off of the surface here. Just go to File, Export something. I forget how to do a JPEG out of that. But it could be done. You could look it up. I'm not going to do it because it's really a bad practice. You don't want to. Only if you're in a pinch. So the thing that we're going to do here, and I'm going to ask you to change this as well, we are going to analyze when the sun is actually coming in from the non-blocked side. So if you look at the model, we have two sides that are developed, and then we have a roof, right? That's all this model is. So I want to see the sun reaching into the space underneath the edge here. So we need to spin it around. My suggestion would be to stop the calculation, change the value to something that's more palatable. So I'm going to change it to 0.5. It'll probably take a minute to process that as well. And then you can go into Rhino and spin this thing around. So I'm going to spin this around 180. So it looks like that. So now I'm going to go back into Grasshopper and run that one. Okay. Now here's the ticket. Okay, so the part of the requirement I'm going to ask of you is that you produce this. Right, I want to see your analysis of the solstices and equinoxes, but also I'm going to ask you for a section. And right now this is in perspective, so it's not really going to look like this. But what you're going to do is draw a section that diagrams the angle of the sun. So if the angle of the sun's coming in at 70 degrees here, down to that point, you should see that, right? So it's going to basically go 70 degrees down to that point, right? And then the other ones are at 50 degrees, so it's going to come at 50 degrees down to there. And then the last one, I think, is at 30 degrees, so it actually reaches really far into the space to about there. Okay, so all of that is going to be drawn in section, and up on the board, that's going to look a little bit like this. Where are these names for? So you're going to have your section's going to look something like this. It might have a couple layers that look like that, and you'll see the back wall probably. I don't know what that actually is going to look like. You might actually see the information behind. There will be a ground plane. And then your diagram is going to show 70 degrees like that, and then it'll show the 50 whatever degrees down to there. Oh, that's more like 30. 50 degrees down to there, and then the 30 degrees coming in down to there, right? And then you'll mark the points of how far in it's reaching into the space. That's it. Okay. I'm going to walk you through here in class how to do the export for those of you who don't recall. And I probably won't collect this on Thursday. I'll provide more description about the graphic nature of it on Thursday. But I'm going to ask you to follow along with me here tonight in class and get the exporting done so that you can draw on it and stuff and be prepared for Thursday when we start doing graphics. Questions?
The way you got the shadows, you just rotated the building?
Yeah, spun the building around 180. Yeah, in case you're curious, guys, when you're running this, north is up. So if you built your model in its proper orientation with, you know, the vertical axis, the y-axis being your north to your building, then you should be fine to run this. Otherwise, if you have a building that's like 13 degrees in some odd direction, but for simplicity of modeling, you rotated it down to be horizontal, you need to rotate it back up in order to run this. Does that make sense? Do I need to clarify that for anyone?